Dinosaur Boy Chapter 14 Martians everywhere. A half Martian, actually, Sylvie corrected me after school that same day. We were at her mother's restaurant again. Mama Juarez's cucina was open to the public now, and from the looks of things, it was becoming popular very quickly. It wasn't even dinner time yet, and already almost every table was full. In spite of the crowd, the three of us were given a prime booth. Those are the perks of being friends with the owner's daughter. That and free chips, which Elliot and Sylvie ate while I demolished a large bowl of greens, minus the mole this time, just in case. Our adventure in the rain had given us healthy appetites. So let me get this straight, Elliot said. Your mom, he looked toward the kitchen door, behind which Miss Juarez had just disappeared. She's human. Yep, and my dad's a Martian. I looked warily at the people sitting around us. Sylvie was wearing her hood up, and underneath I knew her antennae were fastened down with clips again. Now that I knew to look closely, I guess her skin was a little bit smoother and shinier than normal human skin, and her eyes may have been a bit rounder, but other than that, she looked like an ordinary girl. She was also making no effort to keep her voice down at all, if anyone around us was paying attention. But the people around us were all busy enjoying their food. I don't think anybody even noticed my plates or my tail, let alone that there was a Martian at our table. Elliot was still trying to get all the details straight. So if your mom's human and your dad's a Martian, he ventured, I could tell that he couldn't quite believe he was saying that last word out loud. How do they meet? Match.com, Sylvie answered, totally straight-faced. Elliot's eyes bulged. Seriously? No, Sylvie giggled and stuffed another chip in her mouth. My dad is a restaurateur. A what? A restaurateur. It means he owns a bunch of restaurants. He specializes in exotic cuisine. He met my mom while they were both in culinary school in Artesia, just south of Roswell, New Mexico. When they graduated, they got married, moved to Mars, and opened a chain of Tex-Mex Martian fusion places. They're really popular in Mars. You mean on Mars, don't you? Elliot asked. Sylvie shook her head. She was smiling, more than I had ever seen her smile since I'd met her. Maybe she didn't really like having to keep her Martianness a secret. She seemed very relieved to finally be able to talk about it with us. No, I mean in Mars, she was saying, Elliot. Martians live underground. So it's more accurate to say we live in Mars as opposed to on. Elliot looked at me across the table. My head hurts, he announced, and lowered his forehead onto his crossed arms. Sylvie gave him a slightly concerned look, then reached for another chip. You said your dad was away on a business trip. I remembered suddenly. You said that they lived a little bit outside of Portland. That wasn't exactly a lie, Sylvie said, delicately nibbling a chip. Mars is outside of Portland, and it's a lot closer to Portland than, say, Neptune or Saturn. So relatively speaking, Mars is just a little bit outside of Portland. Elliot groaned into his arms. And your dad is in Mars now? I persisted. Sylvie nodded. Until he comes here to grab me. Yeah, he is. He's working. When my parents separated last year, my mom brought me back to Earth, to New Mexico, but it was a little bit too sunny there for me. She fingered her nose, which now had no trace of the sunburn she had on the day we met her. Martian skin is really sensitive. I think it's because of the whole living underground thing. So we moved here. Because there's not as much sun, I guessed? Yeah, that and my mom had a contact in the culinary world. That's how she got this restaurant up and running. She gestured around us. It's the first one she's done without Dad. It's kind of a big deal to her. Oh, I said, pausing to think through everything Sylvia had just disclosed. I was pretty sure Elliot was doing the same thing, only he was doing it with his face down on the table. So you said that all of this had something to do with Principal Mathis. Oh yeah, Sylvie sat up a little bit straighter. I'm pretty sure she's a Martian too. Of course she is, Elliot mumbled into his arms. Sylvie shot him another concerned look. Is he going to be okay? She asked me. He's processing, I told her. Just give him a minute. Okay. We chewed in silence for several minutes before Elliot finally raised his head out of his arms. So, he said, you're a Martian. Half Martian, said Sylvie. We've covered that. And our principal is a Martian too? Elliot continued. I didn't say that, Sylvie corrected him. I said I was pretty sure she's a Martian. What do you mean by that? I asked. Well, Sylvie considered this for a moment. It's just a guess, but I'm more sure now than I was when I first got to this school. What made you more sure? I asked. Well, she's pretty short, and Martians are pretty short. I've never seen her antenna, but she styles her hair pretty big, so she could be hiding them under there. That's two things, Sylvie mused, ticking them off on her fingers as she went. Oh, and she wears really thick glasses. That's a big giveaway. Glasses, I asked. Martians wear glasses? Sylvie took a sip of her Coke and nodded. Most of us, yeah. Our eyesight sucks, at least. It does when we're above ground. I thought back to earlier that day when Principal Mathis had looked right at our total obvious hiding spot without seeing us. The only people who have worse eyesight than Martians are the Jupiterians, Sylvie was saying. I think it's because they come from such a gaseous planet. Their eyesight evolved differently than everyone else's. Jupiter? Elliot exclaimed. There are people on Jupiter too? There are people on almost every planet, Elliot, Sylvie retorted, digging a handful of pixie stick out of her sweatshirt pocket. She set half of them on the table in front of her and tore the tops off the other half with one large rip. You just have to know where to look. But you don't wear glasses, I pointed out. Sylvie leaned toward me and pointed to her eye. I looked closely at the light brown circle around her pupil, and I could just make out the faint curve of a lens. Contacts, she explained. Then she leaned her head back and emptied all of the open pixie sticks into her mouth. But I barely needed them. I had the best eyesight in my entire school back home. She lowered her chin and batted her eyelashes proudly. I have my mom's eyes. So what you're saying, I said, is that we should suspect that all short, big-haired, glasses-wearing people are Martians. Sylvie shrugged. Probably not all of them are Martians, she allowed, but a fair amount of them probably are. There are more Martians on Earth than you might think. And our principal is one of them, Elliot surmised. Probably. And she's keeping 10 of the kids in our class locked in a secret classroom in the back of the school? Elliot continued. Yes, Sylvie agreed, looking pleased that Elliot had finally caught up. And why is she keeping them locked up? I asked. Sylvie shrugged. I don't know. Elliot's eyes suddenly grew huge. Martians don't, eat humans, do they? No, Sylvie exclaimed, looking disgusted. Why would they do that? Ugh. I don't know, Elliot said, looking vaguely embarrassed and muttering something about the Twilight Zone that I didn't catch. He motioned to the pixie sticks. What about the candy? Is that a Martian thing too? Sylvie shrugged. Actually, it's more of an Earth thing. Earth candy is full of high fructose corn syrup and processed sugar. So, Elliot prompted her. That stuff is illegal on pretty much every other planet, Sylvie informed him. So there's no candy on Mars, I asked. There's candy, Sylvie said, making a face as she ripped open the remaining pixie sticks, but we don't have anything like this. She tipped her head back and poured so much sugar into her mouth that a small cloud of dust gathered around her face. When she looked at us again, there was a sprinkling of pink powder on her nose and a giant smile on her face. Well, I said, trying to get back to the point, the kids in the portable are not made out of sugar, so if Principal Mathis is not eating them, what is she doing with them? I don't know, Sylvie said, licking her lips, but we're going to find out. It's time to go back to our original plan. Our original plan, Elliot scrunched his nose as he tried to think, which was, we're going to break into Principal Mathis's office, Sylvie reminded him, tonight.